Welcome to the fifth lecture in the Interwar Years unit. Today we will be examining the other treaties, beyond the Treaty of Versailles, that were signed as part of the Paris Peace Conference. As part of this we will be examining the question of, how did the Big Three handle Germany's allies during the Paris Peace Conference? Firstly, we will examine the geography of Europe before and after World War I in order to understand the significance of the collapse of the Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires. Then we will examine the treaties signed with countries that had formerly been part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Then we will examine the treaties signed with those who had been a part of the Ottoman Empire, with a particular focus on Turkey. We will then draw a comparison between these treaties and the Treaty of Versailles in order to evaluate whether Germany was treated any harsher than the other members of the Central Alliance. Let's start by examining some maps of Europe. This is a map from 1871, and you can see that Central, Eastern and Southern Europe are dominated by four empires, that of Germany, Russia, Austria-Hungary and the Ottomans. The two we are going to focus on for this lecture is the Austria-Hungarian Empire in yellow and the Ottoman Empire in orange. These two empires would form an alliance with Germany, what became known as the Central Alliance, as it dominated the center of Europe. This is a slightly different map from 1914, when World War I broke out. If you look now at the Ottoman Empire, you can see that the northern territories have broken away and become independent. This was one of the key reasons for instability before World War I. This is a map from 1918. You can see that the Ottoman Empire has now become Turkey, with the European territories becoming Albania, Yugoslavia, and Bulgaria. Similarly, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has broken up to create separate countries of Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Romania. Yugoslavia has also formed, absorbing the countries of Bosnia and Serbia. Each of these new countries had to have their own separate treaties with the Allied powers. Each had their own needs and vulnerabilities, especially as new nations, so this had to be balanced against the desire for revenge. The Treaty of Saint-Germain was signed between the Allied powers and Austria on September 1919, so only 3 months after Versailles. Austria was Germany's closest ally, and so the treaty banned Anschluss, the unification of Germany and Austria into a larger nation. Austria had to pay a reparations fee, but the final amount was never fixed. Furthermore, Austria lost territory to Italy and Romania, and their military was restricted to only 30,000 men. In this sense, the Treaty of Saint-Germain echoed the Treaty of Versailles, in the sense that it gave both military and territorial sanctions. The big difference was that the reparations bill was never set. The Treaty of Trianon was the agreement between the Allies and Hungary, which was signed in June 1920, so a full year after Versailles. It was very similar to St. Germain in the sense that it restricted the army to 30,000 men, and Hungary lost land to Romania, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. Furthermore, Hungary were asked to pay reparations, but the amount was not fixed. As part of the Paris Peace Conference, Czechoslovakia was created as a new nation. This was a large strip of land that had once formed the north of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It encompassed a range of different nationalities, who each spoke different languages, and as a landlocked country, it needed support from the Allies to strengthen her land borders. Let's now examine the treaties signed with countries that had been formerly part of the Ottoman Empire. The Treaty of Neuilly was signed with Bulgaria in November 1919. Again, we see both territorial losses and military sanctions. Bulgaria lost land to Greece, Yugoslavia, and Romania, and their military was reduced to 20,000 men. They were given a reparations bill of £100 million. Therefore, the Treaty of Neuilly was not too dissimilar to Versailles. It seems harsher on the military terms, and fairer on the reparations fee, but Bulgaria was not as populated or as economically developed as Germany, so when put in balance, this was a similar treaty. Let's now examine how the Allies handled relations with Turkey, which territorially encompassed the heartlands of the Ottoman Empire. There were two treaties, the first of which was the Treaty of Sèvres signed in August 1920. This reduced Turkey's military to 50,000 men, and resulted in Turkey losing all their European territories, everything west of Constantinople. The Turkish people revolted against the new Turkish government following the signing of the Treaty of Sèvres. They demanded the return of European territories and an increase in the military, since for such a large nation, 50,000 soldiers was wholly insufficient. Put simply, the Turkish people were crying out that the Treaty of Sèvres was too severe. As a result of this, the Allies drafted a new treaty, known as the Treaty of Lausanne. This regained some, but not all of Turkey's European territories. Furthermore, Allied troops were withdrawn from Turkey and the reparations bill was cancelled. This sent a clear signal to all the other Central Alliance nations that if they revolted against their treaty, then it was very difficult for the Allies to enforce its terms. Compared to the other treaties, the Treaty of Versailles was harsher, however this is relative to the size of the German economy and military. The main difference was that the Allies had a stronger vested interest in seeing Germany punished more than the other Central Powers. They set the reparations bill at £6.6 billion, and was willing to send troops into Germany to collect payment in kind in 1923, when they failed to meet the first payment. In contrast, the Turkish government were able to negotiate a new deal with the Allies following civil unrest, and this allowed for a quicker recovery. The Treaty of Versailles was therefore perceived as harsh by both the German people and the international community. Hitler capitalized on this during the speeches he made both in the early 1920s to grow his support base, and in the early 1930s in order to receive votes and rise to power. He essentially made the destruction of the Treaty of Versailles his main goal. Furthermore, the international community began to also perceive the Treaty of Versailles as too harsh. This includes British politicians in the early 1930s, who believed Germany had suffered enough over the previous decade. This led to the British policy of appeasement. They allowed Hitler to break the terms of Versailles in the hope that this would prevent him from pursuing an aggressive military policy in Central Europe. Spoilers: this policy is a complete and utter disaster. Let's now return to our overarching question of how did the Big Three handle Germany's allies during the Paris Peace Conference. Firstly, you must remember that Germany had an alliance with two large empires, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. These two empires broke apart as a result of the Central Alliance's defeat in World War I. This meant that Europe was broken into smaller countries and the Allied powers had to organize for separate treaties with each of these nations. That is why the Paris Peace Conference technically lasted for 4 years. The first set of treaties were made with former members of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. These matched the Treaty of Versailles in terms of severity, however the reparation bill was smaller for each of these nations. The Allies then negotiated treaties with countries that had formerly been part of the Ottoman Empire. This includes the infamous Treaty of Sèvres with Turkey, which was so severe that it had to be renegotiated, creating the Treaty of Lausanne. This sent a clear message to other nations that the treaties could be renegotiated. Finally, it is fair to say that the Treaty of Versailles was harsher than the other treaties. This is mainly because the Allied powers enforced the reparation bill through their invasion of the Ruhr in 1923. However, over time, this led to British politicians believing that the Treaty of Versailles had been too harsh on Germany, and that instead they should allow Hitler to regain some of the territorial and military losses. This would have devastating consequences. Thank you for watching. Tune into the next short series to learn about the creation, function, and ultimately the failure of the League of Nations.